So today we will be talking about, and our title is a little dramatic, and we'll introduce who we are a little bit more in our second slide, but our title is really meant to be a catchful eye here for anybody, but if you get the sense that it's a little too strong, it's because it is. We decided to go and take a psychology approach to our presentation and to kind of do some self-identification of what type of friend you are, and also who are you surrounding yourself with. So welcome to our presentation. Are you a friend or a frenemy? And like I mentioned, we're going to go ahead and get started with our introduction. So who are we? My name is Melissa Sanchez, and like Carissa said, I am currently working at McHenry County College as a college success coach. So I do currently help a lot of our underrepresented minority students, especially our first-gen population, with just additional support. I think that if many of you have experienced going into college as a first-gen student, it is a very intimidating process, and there's just a lot to learn during that first couple weeks and even the first semester that you're there. And I'm basically there to be the big sister, because I don't know if I can be a mom yet to a lot of these mid-20s students, but be the big sister and really help support and encourage their journey through their education. So during that process, if they have questions about financial aid or anything like academic advising, they need additional accommodations and things like that through their education, I just kind of help serve them and refer them to the different offices. And it's really been a rewarding experience to meet the students that I have met, because they come from multiple areas of McHenry County with different challenges. So it's always a different day for me, and always a challenge for myself to make sure that our students are being supported in any way possible. So that's currently where I'm at right now. I've been there for about 3 years total, because I started out as an Upward Bound advisor the first year and then shifted into a college success coach thereafter. And then Michelle, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Michelle Jaldin. I'm currently a first-year PhD student at the University of Illinois at Chicago. Oh, sorry, guys. My research focuses on physical activity in the Latino population in the Chicago community. At the same time, I'm sorry, just give me 1 second. Sorry about that. And what I do hope to kind of gain in the future is to mentor other students as well, coming in as first generations. I think that's really important. Like Carissa said, I didn't have that mentorship in college and coming into my career. So I feel like it's very important, not only to, as like Melissa, like a big sister, mentor upcoming students, but also allowing them to kind of be themselves and be an additional support to peers around them as well.
Thanks. And I just wanted to kind of give us a rough backstory, because it's kind of interesting of how Michelle and I started partnering up in this and what has happened in the last few months, and just to kind of give you a glimpse in how we met and kind of started our journey into this new direction of how we want to be encouraging Latinx professionals, but just in general, really helping support other people through mentorship into the next phase of things that we want to be doing with our goals in life. So it was funny because Michelle and I might have mentioned this earlier in a different workshop. So if you attended any of the workshops previously in the last couple of weeks with any of them that I was hosting, I mentioned that I had met somebody through TikTok in the realm of things like that I didn't really expect. And I think Michelle probably didn't either. She'll probably tell you a little bit more, but she is from DC actually, and currently moved to Chicago, I think, what was it, about a year ago?
Yeah, like almost 9-10 months ago, yeah.
And we actually ended up meeting through a TikTok, which a friend of ours had posted about traveling. And through that realm, we ended up kind of diving a little bit deeper. We ended up doing a chat through Instagram with a lot of the Chicagoland area girls. And then through that went into WhatsApp with about 150 girls that we ended up meeting eventually. And we do a lot of different informal meetups, like through Zoom, or just sometimes we do, COVID regulations and meeting up through like brunch and things like that, but just to get to know each other on a different level. And through that experience, Michelle and I actually got to talk a little bit more. We got to know each other on a more personal level. And it was interesting because just in a few times, people had always asked us, like, I think in our second meeting of just, they're like, are you two sisters? Have you guys known each other for a long time? But it just comes to show you that when you are being open and transparent to a friendship, and really kind of aligning within those goals and values and morals that you might have, something beautiful can come along. And now we're actually hoping, which we'll put in a plug later, but we're hoping that we can go ahead and start a professional development community of networking that we hope we can share with you all. So then that way we can continue encouraging young females and women to continue developing professionally through mentorship. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but what else can you add to the story, Michelle, that I might have missed?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, so like when people ask me, how do you identify yourself, like as an introvert and extrovert? And I'm always like, well, I feel like I can be in between, but I'm definitely more of like an introvert. So for me, it took a big leap to kind of go into the setting of meeting new people. And I felt like it was one of the best decisions of my life because now I'm networking more. I've met friends that I can see myself being friends for a very long time, and having those genuine friendships as well is very helpful, especially since I moved over here. I didn't know anybody. So it's definitely getting out of your comfort zone and being comfortable with that. Yeah.
Awesome, thanks. All right, we'll get started with our presentation. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this quote. So it was funny because I found this quote in an article that I was reading by Meredith Fuller in a Psychology Today article, and it's actually called "Working with Bitches." Mind my language. But in the article, she really put a very powerful quote in there, which kind of helped really reflect on what we will be talking about today. So in the article, she had mentioned, when we disconnect from our emotions and true needs, we can become narcissistic and oblivious to our impact on others. It doesn't enter our consciousness to even consider what we need to be an adult, reasonable, inquiring, and celebrating of difference. So she was talking about an experience when she was working in a company which was mostly filled of many women, and just the experiences that she had there. She came in with a very transparent motivation of, making friendship with colleagues and things like that. But she got in reciprocal, not what she was expecting. So she just noticed it was more about sabotaging on each other, and really it was more an independent piece of like, let's see who's better and who's going to make it to the top and you're going to stay at the bottom. And in a sense like this, right, I think that as women, we are very powerful and we have our mindset to go ahead and do everything, that we want to achieve. And I think that's the awesome thing about women, that we just continue and continue and continue. But what's really more powerful is to also uplift those when you are doing, all these successes, because with those people that you're uplifting as well, they will help eventually support you through whatever it is that you're doing. So I found that quote to be very powerful in a sense of what we will be talking about today. So let's talk about this. The way that we kind of set up our PowerPoint is do the ugly, bad, and good. So we'll talk a little bit more about that and how that kind of relates to our theme here. So with the ugly.
So I want everybody to keep in mind, like throughout the presentation, I want you to think about what your self-worth is and what do you bring to the table as a friend and as a peer. So this kind of brings us into the ugly. And when we say about the ugly, what we mean is sometimes we tend to lose who we are or where we are in that moment in life, that we start to become very disconnected with ourselves and we start to envy other people without checking ourselves and being aware of, well, I do need help. I should ask a friend or a family for help. Like, where do I even begin? But little do we know that these same friends can help us build if we ask for help. We can probably build by ourselves or we can build with them, and just knowing that we can use each other as a stepping stone. And it's important to acknowledge that there's always going to be somebody better than us, and that's okay. That's what makes this world and life so beautiful. And we're all here to empower each other and bring us up. And sometimes it's better, and that cycle just continues. So you learning, you can teach that to somebody else, and then that person teaches it to somebody else. So that, and then Melissa, do you want to talk a little bit about our friends' experiences that we've had in terms of the ugly?
Yeah, so, it's interesting because I think that, and I hope, if we're all being transparent, I think that in some way or another, we've all maybe have felt this way, right? And to some extent or another. And I remember when we were doing the presentation, Michelle and I just come and started talking about some of our experiences. And I, as much as I hate to say it, I've always been, I've been on the other side, and it didn't take me, it took me a while actually to kind of realize of what my feelings were, of why I was feeling envious or jealous about other people being more successful than I was, or kind of feeling intimidated by, friends or so things. So I guess in feelings in regards to that, of why that was happening. And this would happen a lot, I think, when I was in school. I think when I was, my first couple years in undergraduate school, I would just feel very envious that I wasn't where I was supposed to be versus other friends of mine. And it was a very, very low moment for myself. I was trying to kind of figure out who I was at that moment. I was young, and I think that within other, I was going through personal situations that maybe also weren't helping of what I was going through. But eventually, once I got into my master's program, and specifically with counseling, it's always funny how they mention that people who go into counseling programs, it's because they're always dealing with something more inner, deeper, than what they're really trying to go in for. Like, I definitely went into the program thinking like I want to help people because that's what I wanted to do. But I felt like that program almost saved me in a sense, because it really helped me just kind of find that disconnection that I had with my inner self and seek the support and help that I needed. So going into my master's program, I started realizing that a lot of the things that I was actually going through was because of the inner things that I had dealt with in my past, but then also just thinking about, a lot of the things that I haven't dealt with, a lot of the things that I hadn't processed and really learned from those experiences. So, I definitely did not blame. I think at the moment when I was going through some of these envious cycles, I lost a lot of friends, a lot of acquaintances, and there wasn't many people that I had to support me. And I don't blame them. Looking at that and reflecting upon that now, I'm like, I don't blame you. I was such an ugly person, when I was dealing with things like that I was just being selfish, and I didn't really explore of how I was hurting other people as well. So, that was just a little bit about my personal experience. And I don't think that ever since I went into my counseling program and sought the help that I needed, I've ever looked back. And like I said, I think I've really made a shift into just making sure that even if we, it's okay that if we ever get there, but kind of looking at that inner self, if you are experiencing or noticing some of these ugly traits, that you might be portraying to other people. And then Michelle, I know you also had a story as well.
Yeah, so I have a story of a friend, and basically when I was in college, this opportunity was presented to about 4 of us, and it was a research position as an internship during the summer at a hospital in DC. And this girl was my best friend. I knew her since I was probably in 2nd grade, and they had presented the opportunity to us, and me being a good friend, I wanted to talk to her first about it. And I was like, well, like, who wants to do this more? We were talking about it, and then we were like, well, let's just sleep on it and we can decide in the next couple of days. The next day we kind of talk about it, but then I go talk about the opportunity with the actual person who was offering this opportunity. And she's like, well, X just got it. She came in this morning and she talked to me and said she was very interested and she wanted the position, so I gave it to her. And this was all behind my back after we have talked about it. And it kind of, and this was kind of like our first research experience we've ever had. So to me, it was very important to have something like this in my background. And I didn't hear anything from her about a day or two until she was like, well, yeah, like I wanted it. So I went to tell her I wanted it. And that kind of left me in the blank. I couldn't do anything. It was already late in the summer. And then a little bit later, another professor came, was like, I have this other opportunity. It's actually in a big university. And I think you would be a great fit for it. Keep in mind the other research opportunity was more molecular, so it wasn't really down my alley, but I just wanted the experience. And this one that was at this university actually offered clinical work. So I was like, oh my God, this is completely perfect for me. Like, I'm actually grateful that the last opportunity didn't kind of work out. And until this day, if I would have taken that opportunity, I would have been so unhappy. So for me, the point of the story is trusting the process. So yeah, this frenemy went behind my back and took a very valuable opportunity that we were talking about that we didn't even decide who was going to take, but in the end, it worked out. So I think that's something to consider as well. And the next point that I want to talk about is how can we actually spot a frenemy? So usually you have signs of jealousy towards your life or your achievements. They find underhanded ways to hurt you, or they sabotage you with passive aggression. So kind of like, well, they know that you're gonna, they know, but they won't tell you. So it's kind of like, I don't know, if you guys are in college, if you guys are writing notes, but your friend is a better test taker or note taker, you ask them for their notes, and they won't give it to you. Stuff like that, it's very, they're not giving it for a reason, and that's not nice, and they're really not your friend. And they could devalue your achievements and stuff like that. And, coming from a scientific background, some studies have proven that dealing with frenemies can actually increase your blood pressure, your heart rate, and your anxiety level. So I felt was kind of neat to share on here as well. So ways that we can deal with frenemies is having a talk with them. It's really hard, especially if you guys have a background with this person, especially a very long background, but having a talk with them. And if that's kind of not your option, take a break and slowly distance yourself and keeping certain achievements or things to yourself, I think would best work. And that's some of the stuff that I've done kind of to distance myself from that one friend. And a lot of it was keeping my achievements to myself because I'm all about energy. So I didn't want that bad energy in my circle. So yeah, those are, I feel like, some important points to talk about.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to consider, as we're kind of opening up, this is going to be a safe space. And I really want you to reflect on, maybe some experiences that maybe you have had, because later we'll have some time to add to the discussion. And, how have you dealt with some of the, maybe if it was you personally and you're kind of taking, the blame for it and saying, yeah, maybe I have been that toxic friend and at one point in my life, but this is how I learned from it. Or maybe you've experienced this from a different person. And I think that the ways to kind of deal with a frenemy, or even with dealing with yourself, if you're showing some of those toxic traits, are very similar to how Michelle was talking about that too. So thank you for sharing that. All right, so let's talk about the bad. Now, I don't want to say that this is necessarily bad, but I think in reference to my story of how I was sharing earlier, the bad can be kind of like a very thin and fine line. If we're not doing anything to change it, so, to either change the behavior, whether you're getting that, whether you're giving it to somebody else, or whether it's being received, either way, if there's no communication there, it can be bad, right? Because now you're dealing with a very unhealthy relationship, or maybe you are yourself, just not really receiving the help that you need. So, but if we're crossing, if we're not going into that very thin line of allowing that to happen, and you're really trying to do something to change the dynamic of that relationship or change your behavior, that can definitely be a positive thing and going more into the good aspect of things. So when it comes to toxic relationships, or friendships and things like that, whether you are the person receiving it or whether you are the person giving it, right? I think it's always important to explore your inner self, right? What do you value? What are your morals? How would you present yourself to be in a healthy relationship? What are some of those characteristics that you desire? And then also, seeking internal and external support, right? So can you lean on other people that, maybe you have very good, safe relationships to, that you can talk about, with them and saying, I just don't know if these characteristics or the behavior that I'm portraying or the behavior that this friend is portraying to me is healthy. I don't know if this is a relationship that I want to be in. But I think, from personal experience, and everybody's going to do, with their own of how they wish, but through personal experience, I think what has really helped me through this process was therapy, and to really identify some of these boundaries, not only for myself, but for other people, right? And to identify those boundaries very early on. So, if you're coming into a friendship, right, I think it's always important to know where that cutoff or that line is of where it could just seem a little too toxic. And sometimes we get blindsided, I think it was just recently as well that, I was in a friendship that I didn't really realize it was kind of toxic in a sense, but, I had to kind of really come back into my inner self and say, oh man, this isn't really lining up with my morals or how I've envisioned, the other friendships that I've had as well. And exploring resources, right? So I think that can either go more into the therapeutic aspect of things or even just a simple search. It's interesting how much you can find on the internet right now of like what are red flags in a friendship and things like that. But, I think just being super confident about who you are and what you're striving to be in a relationship with a friendship, or vice versa, what you're expecting from another person is healthy enough to really respect those boundaries. So then that way you're not crossing a very thin line of a toxic friendship, or you're kind of noticing that you're in a weird stuck place, in a limbo place that, you find no way out. We never also want that, to be in our friendships, because then when successes are happening, it doesn't really feel good, when you're telling other people, oh, like I've got this going on, and you're not really getting the feedback that maybe you've anticipated from other people, from that friend. So, it's interesting how, we can even probably be relating to that, even nowadays, which is, still interesting. And then Michelle, did you have anything else to add on this?
Yeah, so I think it's also important to evaluate what type of friend are you.
Mm-hmm.
Are you the one always giving, or are you the one always getting? If you're always giving, why? Ask yourself why. Why is this person my friend? What is she giving to me that we can grow off of each other? So it's also important to figure out what side you're in. And I found myself a lot in that position where I was always giving, and it exhausted me so much. It exhausted me to the point where my family was like, why are you helping this girl? Like, why are you doing this? Like, for me, it was always like, well, let me help them with their homework, or let me help them with their life situation first, and I'll take care of myself last. So it's also really important to realize, what side are you in? Are you always giving, or are you always getting? Because if you're always getting, then it's time to kind of say, well, what can I give to this person? Like, it doesn't have to be materialistic. It could be like support. It could be like, are you okay? Like, what do you need? So just checking up on your friends here and there as well.
Yeah, I think it's so hard. Once you kind of start to realize that, and, I think that the hardest part thereafter is, how do you let that friendship go? Which I think that many of us maybe have experienced. And that's always the toughest part. Like, do you just kind of wean them off? Do we ghost them? Do we just cut it off eventually and they'll forget about us? And I've noticed, with a lot of my friends, a lot of my colleagues that, I've always had conversations with them. I think that's always been the part where you kind of came to a conclusion. You're like, this isn't healthy anymore. And how do I kind of let myself go from this in a way that's, going to be, I guess, healthy for you, but healthy for the other person, and not leave it in a more toxic place than before. But that will kind of lead us into our next point as well. So the good. All right. So getting started with this, right? Just being transparent and true. I think this is just going to be a common theme for us, that we want to make sure that not only are you showing your transparent self, but you're opening the door for others to show that transparent self. And I think that sometimes that can be really scary. Because I guess for myself recently, I feel like I've noticed I've been more comfortable in this aspect, because people who are going to respect me and appreciate what I let them know are going to hold that true and dear to their heart, and not let other people know about it. But I feel like it's like, once you kind of get that tick of people, like other people knowing beyond of who you told, it's like, we might have to have a conversation now, right? So being, true and transparent, and having those open and honest conversations of, like I said, where your boundaries are going to be important, and really kind of putting that fine line there. So doing that's going to be a lot helpful to having more of those healthier friendships too. Networking, right? So you just don't know. I think that networking is a big buzzword right now, where, we're trying to network as much as we can, especially because of the flexibility that we have through online services. Never once did I think I was going to meet somebody like Michelle through TikTok, but here we are. And we've really built a really good relationship through this. And, it just comes to show you that different platforms can really open up some of these different types of relationships. And, not only Michelle, but I think I've also developed a really awesome and true relationships with a lot of the other ladies on the chat. And naturally, you'll kind of see who you're vibing with, right? I think that myself, and I don't know, maybe about Michelle too, if I'm speaking for you as well, but it's all like energy based for me, right? It's like the type of energy that you're giving and the type of energy that I'm perceiving. That's how I'm sensing that there's going to be something beautiful out of this. And that starts with just kind of opening yourself up to opportunities to network, honestly. And sportsmanship. I think we can't emphasize this enough, but when, maybe if you're not in the place that right now, maybe you don't got a lot of stuff going on, but that's okay. There could be somebody else that, is trying to build a small business and they just need support. Or maybe there is somebody who just needs additional, encouragement to sign up for that PhD program. And you're just there to really help provide some of that. It can be as little, as just kind of being there for them and being a good listening ear, or to just supporting a small business by buying a sweatshirt. There's a different array of things, but sportsmanship is going to be really key here. And I know Michelle's going to kind of expand a little bit more on this, but, the more that we support each other through these aspects of life, the more that you're going to feel it's more of a genuine connection there, because we're supporting each other through some of these major life changes. And we're here to kind of, amp each other up when it comes to that. And Michelle, you had something to add on that too.
Yeah, so I guess kind of going off what you said earlier, even if somebody is doing better than you, they still need your support. So this is where sportsmanship comes. So making sure that they are okay. And also, yeah, you're going through your own stuff, but everybody, they still need support no matter how well they're doing. So just being there for them as well.
Mm-hmm.
So this brings us into our next slide, which is 5 ways to empower each other. Our first is being honest. So be honest with yourself, be honest with your friends, with your peers. Nothing bad comes out of honesty. I promise you that. If you are not honest with yourself and your friends, it's going to be worse. And it just keeps on rolling into the same cycle. It just perpetuates it. The second one is encourage and being a cheerleader for your friends. So as I said earlier, even if they're doing better than you, always keep encouraging them, always be a cheerleader for your friends. I think that's really important. Also, sharing opportunities. Sharing opportunities is one of the best ways, and it kind of goes into like building your network as well. But if you have an opportunity and you know of somebody, or it could help somebody, share it. Don't keep it to yourself. Even if you don't know anybody, just posting it on Facebook, it gets shared around, and although it doesn't directly help your one friend, it can help your friend's friend's friend. So sharing opportunities is one way I feel like to empower each other. Again, building your network and telling your story. Telling your story, another friend can learn from this. So I feel like there's power to storytelling in every field, and this kind of sticks with people, and it gives life lessons as well. And one of the things that I wanted to note is being aware and recognizing your feelings and thoughts is the first step of being mindful of how you choose to cope with life and their events. So we can't control certain circumstances, but you can control your thoughts, and you can put that out to the environment and to those around you. So that is also very important.
That was beautifully said.
Thank you.
So we just wanted to share some quotes here for you. So, these are just some that when Michelle and I were looking, they stuck out to us. So celebrate her success without questioning your own. Did you want to do the second one?
Yeah. So be the woman who fixes another woman's crown without telling the world that it was crooked.
I think that's like the one that we always see on social media, with the one that the girl's like helping her fix her crown. And I think that's one of my favorite ones. When I read that one, I was like, this makes so much sense.
Yep.
And empowered women help empowered women help empower women, right? So those that, feel empowered are going to be those empowering, right? And kind of making sure that we're lifting up our ladies with us. We're not leaving them behind. We're supporting each other. The world is already rough out there, right? And it's in a white man's world, right? We got to be here, especially for our Latinx women, our women of color, our underrepresented, our minorities, because to be very honest, we're the ones that are, we're struggling the most. I was reading actually a research the other day as well, through a presentation that I attended. And, it just comes to show you that in comparison to a lot of other, obviously we get paid like 70 cents to a dollar just already to a normal white man, but Latinx women are actually our lowest paying women in the field, and any field. And, we really want to make sure that we're not making that or sabotaging any of our fellow color, women of color, sabotaging that institution more, right? Why do we want to do that to each other? We want to make sure that we're uplifting, providing, like Michelle said, opportunities to each other to be successful. I think there is more than enough room for, for us to do that. And it was interesting too, because just when we did our other workshop of, encouraging our small businesses, and, I think in conversation, I talked to some of the ladies and they said, it was so intimidating to get started because right now there's so many girls doing, cake pops. There's so many girls doing earrings, or there's so many girls doing this. And, we didn't really realize that this is a good network or a good business to go into. But you go to the grocery store and how many people or how many companies sell bread? How many bread brands do you find? Everybody's kind of doing their own thing, but we can all still fit in one area all here together to support each other. There's not going to be a better one or nothing. There's room for us to all grow. So just keeping these quotes with you is going to be very encouraging.
So with this quote, it says, dreams get you started. Action, consistency, and discipline are what keep you going. And this quote was by Brad Taylor. I feel like this I live it day by day. I love reading this quote. It's just saying, that you keep keeping up, keeping that action, keeping that consistency and discipline within yourself, within your circle. That's what's going to keep you going. And that's what's going to build your success in life. And it's important to also note that if you are helping somebody else, the world doesn't need to know that you're helping somebody else. Keeping that to yourself between you two is important. Nobody needs to know. If they want, you can let others know, but only if they want. So I feel like that was also important to note from the last slide.
Mm-hmm. All right. So before we kind of talk about a little bit about our information here, we want to hear from y'all. So I know Gabriella put in the chat that I know this was a little bit earlier, Gabriella, but you said that this was going to be one of your questions. So I just want to see if you want to ask your question. But is there anybody else that did you reflect on any of this? Did you maybe have some similar experiences that you wanted to share about before we kind of touch on to our contact info? This is an open discussion workshop. So please feel free to unmute yourself.
Thanks, Melissa. Yeah, I think Michelle covered it. It was going to be on whether you were giving more of what you are receiving. Because especially because of the first slide where it said, like you can come off as like jealous or not wanting to help because you didn't want to provide those notes or you didn't want to help that other person. But then I thought of it, from the other way around where it's like, well, maybe it's because you probably feel that you're being taken advantage of. And so how do you differentiate that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, right? Like, I think when you get it from the other side as well to kind of really feel that, what is that line there? But I think really kind of making sure that you're having that discussion and open transparency conversations with that person is going to be important, because that can be kind of hard. We're not mind readers, right? We wish we can read each other's minds, but making sure that we're having that open dialogue is going to be important. What else? What else do we got?
Does anybody have like any experiences where they have empowered others, or maybe tips that you wish we covered that you have that you believe can help others? Have you ever caught yourself being a frenemy? I think that's also important to recognizing yourself.
I'll definitely touch on the point that you mentioned about sharing like opportunities. I know that Melissa, I mean, I'm constantly like sharing stuff on like Facebook and Instagram. And, sometimes you do feel like, oh, I'm just sharing just to share. But actually, yesterday or 2 days ago, I got a message from someone sharing like, hey, thanks so much for posting all that you post because of you, my husband was able to do the CDL program at your college. And so that was honestly like an awesome feedback, great a story that someone was able to share because people are watching constantly. And so it's good that you are able to share, the resources or the connections that you have to other folks or programs or anything really, because, people are able to see this, and that is how you are able to aid in their growth.
That's great. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an awesome example, Gabriella. I think that with the experience that we have, why not share the wealth of knowledge that, come with it? And, I think that that's every reason why withhold that from other people when they can provide opportunities. Any other experiences that would feel comfortable sharing?
I'll go. I think it's I really appreciated when you said, sometimes you need to evaluate the type of friend that you are, because we can sometimes quickly point the finger at so many frenemies that we have, not realizing that we created that frenemy by the actions or the traits that we portray to them, which reciprocated them to respond to us negatively. So, definitely doing that self-evaluation in just my personal relationships, it is definitely important. And another thing that you said that really stuck out to me was trusting the process. I think sometimes that when you gave your example of that, your friend kind of went and got that internship, spoke up for herself and gave it, sometimes we just be like, oh man, how could you do this? But trusting the process and knowing that what's for you is for you, you were able to gain a better position later. So I really appreciate you pointing that out. That was wonderful.
Yes. If it's gonna be for you, I'm telling you, that's the universe talking right there. Yeah, I really like that. Maria said, I finally put myself first. I had a friend who would guilt trip me because I wasn't checking in on her. This was during a time I personally was going through a rough time. She never bothered to ask if I was okay and said I was a bad friend. I realized I didn't need to be put in that position because when she needed me, I was always there. Yeah, and that's a perfect example of you're the one that's always giving. And it just takes that one time of, are you okay? Like, you haven't texted me in 2-3 days. Are you okay? Like, just those words are comforting, and you know that you're being supported by that one friend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Maria, I think that we can all kind of relate to this, situation, because I've definitely been down that road as well. And, I think how I've always handled that. I mean, before when I was in my bad habits, I would never really handle that appropriately. But I think now knowing the ways that, I can go about having these conversations with people, it's just being transparent, using I statements of just how you feel, never putting the blame on anybody else. And that's literally counseling 101. Just using I statements of how you feel. I felt hurt by what you did. Or I felt hurt by you not communicating with me, but maybe I'm interpreting this wrong. Can you just provide me some additional feedback of, maybe if I was doing something incorrect or, things like that. But I think that just using those I statements alone and really using feeling words are going to help just kind of lower that, I guess, that tension a little bit when there might be already some tension built up based on what was happening. But even after that, if you're noticing you're not getting the response that you're looking for, it might be kind of worth it to reevaluate that friendship. What are you giving versus what is being received? And, is it worth losing, that friendship, or worth just, kind of letting it flow out, or worth keeping, just kind of depending. I think every friendship is going to be very different, but it's worth a try to just kind of talk to them. She would just listen and say what she wanted. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it seems like it was just a one-sided type situation.
Yeah, I would just slowly separate myself from that person. And it's hard. It really is, because it's still hard for me to separate myself from friends that are toxic in my life. One of the things also that I realized was you realize who your friends are when you're most in need. Especially during the pandemic, I moved 10 hours away driving from my friends. And I probably, out of all the friends that I have maybe like 8 friends that are like, how are you doing? How is Chicago treating you? Are you okay? Because, pandemic has caused so much anxiety in others, in some. So realizing that as well, and keeping those friends that actually do care for you and do ask how you are not every day, but at least once in a while.
Right. Thank you for sharing, Maria.
Yes, thank you. Well, let's show our speakers some love using some of our Zoom reactions. We're almost out of time on our session, but we definitely want to thank Michelle and Melissa for those powerful words, and definitely come and share their experiences with us. In the chat box below, I have put our web address. So we want to make sure that you keep in contact and interact with us. And so lastly, we will be surprising a lucky winner with conference swag. So be sure to keep checking our website to join our future workshop sessions and your chance to win some of our conference goodies.
Thank you, Carissa. So
And thank you both.
Nancy, I just wanted to make sure that you guys got our contact information. So you'll see that individually, we got myself and Michelle's emails if you wanted to contact us. And we also got our social medias and LinkedIn. And then our Women Con Ganas, that's going to be our awesome plug. So if you're interested in joining our professional network for women, please feel free to follow us. That is still a work in progress, but we're super excited about what to see this year is going to bring up for us. So if you want to join our journey and kind of building this up, feel free to join us on Instagram.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all. Have a good one.
Thank you.